Hi, and welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith, and in this video, we're going to learn the 1-to-4 player game, Chronicles of Crime, designed by David Securial and published by Lucky Duck Games, who helped sponsor this video. With crime spreading in the city of London, you and a team of forensic experts have come together to try to solve these difficult cases. And although you'll have access to evidence, leads, and witnesses, the one thing you won't have is a lot of time. So, join me at the table and let's learn how to play. To set up, place this evidence board in the center of the play area with these location sheets face down in a pile nearby. One of them, Scotland Yard, has a house icon here on the back as well as on the front, and it should be placed at the bottom of the board here. Face down, also set out the character and special item decks, which you can distinguish by their backs, and you'll find it's best to keep these in order based on the values printed here. The cards with these backs are the evidence categories, and these can be left face up or even spread out on the table, and we'll see why you might want to do this a little bit later. These 4 boards are the forensic contacts, which will be helping your team, and while all of the players will have access to all of these characters, you can choose to split them up amongst the players just to help share the responsibility of managing them. You'll also need to acquire the free app for Apple or Android devices, which I have here all ready to go. We'll open this, and then you select the story and scenario you'd like to play. For the core game, you'll find those located under London's Forensic, and there's a tutorial and 5 separate cases, 3 of which chain together to create a larger ongoing investigation that you can play one after the other. There's also additional downloadable cases that you can buy within the app, and other expansion boxes that you can pick up separately with even more cases. For this scenario, we're going to play the tutorial, and this will give us an introduction at the beginning, which we'll just skip through until we get to this screen, which tells us to locate the chief officer and shows us a character icon with the number 33. Whenever you see that icon, go through the character deck, find that number, and then reveal that character, placing it in the indicated location, which in this case it told us was Scotland Yard. And that's the setup. In Chronicles of Crime, the story of a case will be revealed as you play, providing you opportunities to interrogate witnesses, gather evidence, and investigate crime scenes. When you're ready to solve the case, you'll be prompted to answer a series of questions and then be given a score based on your performance. The game isn't really played in turns. Instead, as a group, everyone discusses what they'd like to do next, and then they do it. So let's go back to the table, and I'll explain the options that you have. When you begin a scenario, it provides you with some starting items, in this case, the police chief. And all items that appear in the game have a QR code, and you'll be deciding as a group which items to scan next. This is how you interact with or get information about items. And a common option is scanning a character like our police chief. You must be at the location of the character you wish to interact with, and the top of the screen always indicates where you're currently located. We start the game at Scotland Yard, and that's where the police chief is, so let's interact with him now. To scan a code, position this crosshair over the QR code that you want to scan, and then tap and hold. This will confirm your selection. And here, the police chief is telling us that an old woman has been found dead. And we see this familiar character icon again and the number 7. So we take that card from the related deck. And when you're not instructed about the location of a new character, just place it in this area. It has space for 3 cards, but if you ever have more characters than would fit here, just set them somewhere nearby. In the app, I just want to quickly point out a couple of things. First, at the top, you're told the day of the investigation and the current time. And this is important because most everything you do in the game will cost you 5 minutes of game time. Our first conversation with the chief didn't cost us anything because the game did start at 9 a.m. But normally, anytime you scan an item, ask a character about something, or observe a crime scene, 5 minutes of game time will pass. The quicker you solve a case, the better your final score may be, and in some scenarios, as time passes, the case itself can change. A character who was in one location might move to another. A killer on the loose might claim another victim, and so on. Just like with a real case, you never know exactly how much time you're working with, so just try your best to investigate the crime in the most efficient way. Going back to the app, we can also see the police chief's name here at the top, and this is because he was the last person that we scanned. As long as a character's name is here, then anything that we scan from this point on is something that we're asking them about. And we can ask about any items that we've come across, and those things don't have to be at the current location. So let's ask the chief about the victim by scanning her code. But before we do, I'm going to go into the settings by tapping here, and then I'm going to select Auto Scan. From now on, when we scan a QR code, it will automatically give us a result. We don't have to tap to confirm it. And now the police chief tells us that the woman, Anna Taylor, was found dead in her home in Notting Hill. Also notice that asking the chief about Anna added 5 minutes to our time. And also take note that when the chief talked about the Notting Hill district, this symbol appeared within the app. And when you see this, it'll also be paired with a letter. This means that you go through and find the location sheet with that letter marked on it. And anytime a location is revealed, you place it beside any one of the spots marked with this location symbol. And there's several of them around the board. Now we also know that this is where the body of Anna is located because that's what the chief told us. So we can move her there now. And these 3 spaces are marked for adding characters. But if you ever need to add more than 3, just set them beside the location. If we had more items to ask the police chief about, we could choose to scan those as well. But the only thing we have left is this new location. But you cannot ask people about locations. When you're done talking to a character, tap this goodbye button here to move on. Another thing you can scan is a location board in order to travel there. And you can do this by scanning the code here. And as you can see at the top, the application tells us that we are now at the victim's apartment in Notting Hill. I'll also point out that traveling always adds 20 minutes to your time. And sometimes a location will offer you the option to search for clues, which is this button here at the top. But before you select that option, have the other players take these evidence category cards and spread them face up on the table. While one person uses the app, the others will be looking for matching evidence categories from those here on the table. And this will make more sense with an example, so let's go back to the application. The player chosen to search the scene will hold the app and tap here where they are given 3 options. If you have the 3D glasses, which you can pick up separately, you can attach them to your device now. And this will allow you to experience the search in an immersive virtual reality format by tapping the green button. Instead, you can tap the second button if you don't have the glasses, and then after a 5-second delay, you'll be able to use your device to literally look around the scene by holding it in place and then turning yourself around. And you can look up, and you can look down, and you'll just want to call out to the other players the things that you're seeing. For example, on the ground here, I'm seeing several cats. They appear to be either sleeping or maybe dead cats. And there's also some playing cards there. I can see some photographs. There is a clock on the wall. There's what appears to be the dead body of Anna. That's terrifying. And here I can see what looks like a piece of cake on the ground. Some more dead cats. And a telephone. It looks like maybe the rest of the cake is there as well. I can see some books in the background. And after 40 seconds, the time will run out, and then you can hand the device off to another player to check the scene as well, or not. Just remember, each time you check the scene, it adds 5 minutes to your time. So we'll say no and then move on. Now, as we're calling out items, the other players should have been looking for evidence categories that match, setting them aside. For example, we called out photographs, so they pulled a card called Photos and Cameras. We also saw cats, so they pulled Animals, and so on. Now, there may not be a card for everything that you come across, and you may miss some things, and that's why you might want to have another player look at the crime scene again. But either way, when you're done, you then scan each selected item to see if they relate to the case. We'll start with the animals, and the application is confirming that they are in fact dead. And if we tap next here, we're getting a little bit of tutorial information you would not normally get in the main game. But then we get this sign. And this tells us that we've actually found an important clue, and so we are meant to add it here to our evidence board into one of the empty spaces. So then we'll click next, and again, we're getting some more tutorial information that we'll just skip through here. And now we can scan something else. Next, let's take a look at the photos that we scanned. And here we're told they're not really of any interest. And again, we're not getting that sign that tells us to add it to the board, so that means instead we'll just return it to this deck of unused evidence cards. Now, every time you scan a card, it's going to cost you 5 minutes, so you'll want to avoid scanning items that you don't think would relate to the case. But to save us time, I'll just scan the rest of these and then add the ones to the board that were relevant. It'll look something like this when you're done. Now, another investigative option you always have
is to check in with your forensic contacts. These are the 4 specialists that we put on the table during the setup. And you can call them at any time from any location, and they can give you important insights. The doctor helps with autopsies and medical issues. The hacker helps with technology and communication devices. The scientist can help you learn about physical evidence you found. And the criminologist can give you psychological insights and background checks on the people that you encounter. Just scan the specialist that you want to talk to, let's say the doctor, and the item that you want to ask about. For example, we could ask him about Anna herself and the body that we found. The doctor will then share what he knows, like the time of death. But also, he's telling us that there was a poisonous residue found. Anytime you see a star icon and a number, you will pull that item from the cards with a star back and then add them to your evidence board as we're instructed here. Now, this poison is something that we might want to ask the scientist about later. Each question you ask is another 5 minutes of game time, and when you're done talking to a specialist, just tap the goodbye button. Now, there are many other questions I could have asked the doctor, but I don't want to spoil the case for you, so we'll move on. Another aspect of the game to consider is that sometimes you'll ask a character about an object and they'll give you a particular answer, but then later in your investigation, if you came back and asked them about the same thing, they may have a different answer for you based on the other evidence that you've uncovered. This could change how much they're willing to tell you, or even their version of the story. Also, there's one other item here in the menu system, which is called History. And when you go here, you can actually click through all the different screens that you experienced so far during the case, if you want to go back and see what someone said, or maybe you forgot a piece of information that someone told you. You've now seen all the different types of scans that you can perform, and as you continue the case, you'll find new locations to visit and people to talk to. And when you meet new people, you'll want to ask them about the different types of evidence that you've collected to see if they have helpful information to share, or if they might say something suspicious, something that might give you a sense of their motivations for being involved in the crime. And you can also pause the game at any time and close down the app, and if you restart that scenario, it will resume where you left off, or you can even just restart it from the beginning. Just make sure to save any cards you had pulled from the decks if you do plan to resume the case later. Once you believe you've solved the case, you can give your report to the chief by going back to the home location, Scotland Yard, and then tap on the Solve the Case button here at the top. If you confirm that you're ready to solve the case, your team will then be asked a series of questions by the app, and to answer them, you scan the cards that support your deduction. Afterwards, you'll get a score based on how correct you were and how long it took you to finish the case. And you can see here, I'm blurring out the details so as not to ruin the mystery for you. Either way, you can then play the scenario again if you'd like to try to do better, or you can click the solution button to have the case fully explained to you. Then when you're ready, you can start a new case and solve a new crime. And that's everything you need to know to play Chronicles of Crime. If you have any questions about anything you saw here, feel free to put them in the comments below, and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. You'll also find forums for discussion, pictures, other videos, and lots more over on the games page at Board Game Geek, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, please consider giving it a like, subscribing, and clicking that bell icon so you get a notification anytime we post a new video. But until next time, thanks for watching.